Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Before I get started, I want to take a moment to thank our Heavenly Father, as none of this would be possible without His mercy or grace. I also want to thank Doug, Brenda, and Lori from the Georgia Justice Project for having me here tonight. And a few other special individuals, Mrs. Karen Jones, the world's best publicist, just a little marketing. Dr. Jay Faber, who flew from California to be here tonight, and my lady, Emily, for her friendship, love, and support. Thank you. To form a more perfect union. This statement emphasizes our founding fathers' intentions when they drafted the preamble to our Constitution. The fundamental purpose of our Constitution was to provide us with the guiding principles aimed to make America a perfect union. When my parents migrated here from Buenos Aires, Argentina, it was those principles that guided them to pursue the American dream. My parents, they believed in the American dream. They saw a nation that was built on hope, that offered security and prosperity, and they wanted their children to grow up to be individuals that would exemplify what it meant to be an American. When I look in the rearview mirror, it's easy to be grateful for my parents' move to the United States, but I didn't always feel that way. Today, it's really easy. I stand here, a dual licensed attorney, an author, and a founder of a nonprofit, so by all accounts, I'm truly living the American dream. But my path to this stage was truly unconventional. I went through lower socioeconomic environments, a compulsory education system that failed to stimulate me, and I went through extreme poverty that caused drastic measures in my life. Poverty has a crippling effect on people. When I was a kid, I couldn't understand why the families in my neighborhood and my family were so broke. It did something to me. It made me extremely angry. And as Doug mentioned, I was arrested at 11 years old. I stole a set of pegs so I could tow my brother around town. It's the only transportation we had. When I got to court on that case, the judge ordered me into a community control program. As an 11-year-old, I had to perform 50 hours of community service and complete theft deterrent programs. Now, that wasn't the worst part of it. The worst part of it was that my parents had to bear the cost. And for a family that was struck by poverty, a father who was working 70 hours a week to make ends meet, this cost simply exacerbated our financial situation. I felt guilty about the cost, and the burden of that guilt was too much to handle in a healthy, constructive manner. That arrest opened the door to the darkest years of my life. I, overnight, became the bad kid. No parent wanted their children to hang out with me. I had a criminal record at 11. I was on probation. The kids that I was able to hang out with, I was no longer able to see because I spent my weekends doing community service hours. And you know how it goes. You tell a kid he's brilliant, he's going to show you he's brilliant. And if you tell him he's a criminal, he might just end up with 13 arrests and 8 months behind bars. Poverty is what planted the seeds of bitterness in my heart. But living in a gang-saturated environment made things a lot worse for me. At 13, I started 7th grade at John F. Kennedy Middle School. And my parents worked really hard, I remember that week, so that I could have a new set of clothes and a book bag. And the first Friday, I'm leaving school, and 2 kids walk up to me and say, "Hey, where are you going?" I said, "I'm walking home. Can we walk with you?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" I was so naive, I thought they wanted to be my friends. The next thing I remember was waking up in a secluded area, shoes gone, shirt gone, pants gone, book bag missing. These kids literally beat me unconscious and took all my stuff. When my parents called the cops came home and said, "There's nothing we can do because you can't remember any helpful information." And this thing happened repeatedly for me. But I was able to defend myself. As a matter of fact, I was very good at defending myself until 15 kids came to jump me one day after school. And again, the cops said they couldn't do anything. The neighborhood I grew up in was really tough. But that beating was not the worst thing. Just a few days after that, I witnessed a murder at 13. I was at the movies with my brother, and we heard a commotion break out, so we snuck over to see what was going on. And we saw some kids that looked like they were gang affiliated. And there was 4 against 1. The one that was on the ground spits in the face of his attacker. The attacker pulls out a gun and shoots him in the chest. I've never seen anything dead before. I knew he was dead instantly. We ran and cried all the way home. And that night, I dreamt that I was the kid who got shot. And I knew right then and there that if I didn't take action to protect myself, I would surely end up the same. This was the reality I faced. Survival of the fittest. I dreamt as a kid to become an attorney. But at 13, I wasn't on the path to a legal career. I was on the path to being a gangster. I got jumped into a gang so I could survive my neighborhood. And gangbanging gave me an identity. There's power in identity, but if you create the wrong kind of identity, you start to lose your true self and everything that matters along the way. Your faith, your family, and your freedom. The streets created an addiction in me. I was no longer David. I was Red. I put a team together, and we went after money. We did whatever we could to overcome poverty. We moved thousands of pounds of marijuana, stole hundreds of vehicles, committed various forms of fraud. We had no fear, just ambition. But it had a high price. At the end of the day, I was charged with grand theft, criminal mischief, burglary of an occupied conveyance, possession of marijuana, driving with a license suspended, loitering, DUI, aggravated battery. At some point, I faced 15 years in prison. Taking the steps to becoming the man I am today was not easy. The discipline it required was overwhelming. I was addicted to the streets. I was in and out of jail. I had an 8th grade education, never had a real job. My parents barely spoke English. And I went through the system at the height of Get Tough on Crime movement from the 80s and the 90s that gave us mandatory minimums and the emphasis on prosecution and punishment, not rehabilitation. Nothing good comes from putting a kid in lockup. 2 things can happen. You either decide that it's not that bad and you don't mind going back, or you learn how to commit more serious crimes by associating with hardened criminals. I became a repeat offender. It was at that point in my life where 2 people came into it that had a profound positive impact, and I found my faith. The reason I was able to make it out was because I started to have hope when I started to have faith. This is where my real struggle started. I prayed for forgiveness for the life I led, and I prayed for a life of purpose, but it was not easy to break the self-imposed negative cycle of living on the streets and going back to school. When I went for my first internship, I had to write a letter, email, fax, and make a phone call every single day for 3 weeks to the same organization. When I applied to law school, I sent out 50 applications, and every single one of them was rejected except for one because of my criminal history. John Marshall here in Atlanta gave me a chance. Today, I stand before you a legal practitioner, a published author. I operate a nonprofit that helps people like me, but I can assure you that every step of the way was a struggle. And I'm here today because I want to prevent others like me from struggling so terribly. It's time to break the cycle. It's time to break the cycle of repeat offenders. We need to continue to reduce the barriers to reentry. Like Doug said, no life is beyond hope or redemption. People need resources and opportunity. Numbers don't tell us lies. Recidivism statistics are alarming. America owns the highest rate of incarceration in the world with 2.2 million people serving time. There are 7 million others that are on probation or parole. Only Texas outranks Georgia. Only Texas outranks Georgia for the combined number of people in jail, in prison, on parole, or on probation. Alone, Georgia has 160,000 probationers. We are 1 degree separated from the epicenter of this nationwide issue. This problem did not start 2 or 3 years ago. This is decades in the making, and it's going to take just as long to undo. We must have the commitment to stay the course. We have problems, but these problems give us the best opportunity to bring about meaningful criminal justice reform. The Georgia Justice Project is fighting for that reform. Doug, Brenda, Lori, their entire staff, and those aligned with them, they're committed to this reform. And as their impact grows stronger each day, they're bringing about hope to individuals with criminal histories who really want jobs, who want an education, and who want housing in a safe neighborhood. I'm here to show you that our past do not define us. People can overcome their worst struggles, but in order to become the best version of yourself, you have to have real hope. The strides we've made to date, banning the box, the record restriction statute, the updating of the First Offender Act, the tax credit, these things show the rest of the nation that Georgia is sending the message that we believe in criminal justice reform. We understand that we cannot resolve the problems that we have today with the thinking that got us there decades ago. Our message is sound and clear. We are committed. Our message is what creates hope for a bright future in those disadvantaged by the grip of poverty. The results that we're creating foster ambition in those that are crippled by a criminal history. And we are creating a network of opportunity that prevents people from returning to a life of crime. We've made a lot of strides, and we're only getting started. Usually I end with a narrative about how my faith led me to the podium, but I want to do something a little different tonight. I want to challenge you. How do we want to be identified as a society? We want to be remembered for how we treat one another. And I'm not talking about affluent individuals or people with power. I'm referring to the poor, the incarcerated, the ones that don't have any hope. We are all part of the equation. Our humanity depends on what we do for one another. So I'm challenging you. Find someone who needs hope and lend a hand, because together we will pave the road to a more perfect union. Thank you all for being here tonight. God bless you.